Welcome everybody, Wolfpack chatter, Wolfpack chatter, Wolfpack chatter. Here we go. So, we're going to talk about kind of the anatomy of stress, what goes on, and we aren't going to take kind of a look at, hey, stress is bad and everybody's stressed out and all of that stuff. That's not what we're doing. We are just going to take a look at what stress actually does, okay? And kind of run through this post that I wrote. So that's why I'm going to be looking off because I haven't memorized all of this stuff. So stress is a natural reaction in the body. If you have read the book Calm the F Down and Rise to the Occasion, or any other smarty book that talks about brain functionality and human functionality and stuff like that, addictions like this too, there are innate processes behind the process of stress and all of this stuff. And so we need to just kind of look at it objectively and understand what it does in the body, and then we will apply that knowledge to our life and think, OMG, okay, I need to get this right. So here we go, the anatomy of stress. I'm going to put a link on the bottom to the article that I wrote so you can read some of this stuff, because there's some interesting comments and stuff from Smarties about stress. So, but stress is it's a biological process, a physiological process in the body meant to arm you for fight or flight. Okay, fight or flight means you're alive or you're dead. And so this is where it's innate and it's quick. And the body has been evolving it and fine-tuning it for a long time. It's, you know, I wrote a blog today about when people tell you to calm down, and when folks that are suffering from anxiety, or depression's a little different, but anxiety's kind of not. Anxiety's a little bit more tied in with the fight or flight. And then when someone says calm down, so you have this innate system in your brain, the monkey in your brain. It's fast, it's quick, it's your primary innate system to help fight or flight. It works without you even thinking. That's how you stay alive. And then the calm down idea is above that. It's higher level thinking, it's slower thinking. We don't have a calm down button. We have a vagal nerve. But we don't have, you know, the fight or flight system. It's geared to go. So it's there for a reason. And here's kind of the stuff that it does. It's super fascinating. So the stress response, and it's not just stress, it's not just cortisol. It's kind of this cascade effect of like 1,000,000,001 things that happen when this stress response gets triggered. It lowers secretions in the digestive system, the digestive enzymes, causing the pH of your stomach to rise, which means that it causes your digestion to slow down. Because if you're running from a saber-toothed tiger or whatever, you don't need to digest the food that's in the belly at that time. And that's why sometimes people throw up after a stressful event, because the whole digestion system gets off, because the digestive enzymes and everything have kind of freaked out a little bit. Stress causes oxygen and blood to be diverted from digestion, so it'll go to the brain and to muscles, specifically the ones that you move. Okay, it makes sense. Fight or flight. You need to be alert, you need to think super sharply, and you need to be able to move. Okay, not digest your food and stuff like that. So this is where this talk, we've been talking about stress in the gut. That's why we're talking about that. Oh boy. And so they have some words. Allostatic load. This is like a chronic situation of being under stress all the time. So what is stress? Stress is any type of physical, mental, or emotional factor that causes tension in the body. And this is from the medical world, so that word tension kind of weirds me out a little bit, but it causes us to go like that and be on the ready. Tension. This tension causes chemical, physical, or behavioral changes. Stress, or the fight or flight response, is an evolutionary mechanism for survival of the species. It is innate. It's usually on autopilot and very much needed. So post-traumatic stress, It's, you know, all of that stuff when you're talking about fight or flight. That is all this fundamental survival. It's touching the survival button, and this is where, you know, you're getting down to this very innate, very deep level of yourself. Hey, Tori, hot stuff. I am hot stuff. I just ran an hour. Anyway, focusing. So stress, it is quick and sharp, and it needs to be quick and sharp. Okay, so an example of not quick and sharp and quick and sharp. If you've ever been in, like, on the highway or something, and you needed to respond pretty quickly to either someone pulling out or almost sideswiping you, or some car almost hitting your tri-bike on the back, and then you swerve because you've seen it, and you respond really quick, and you do the right thing because you really quickly assessed what was around you, and you could do this and you could do that, and then immediately after, you had this surge and your skin was kind of prickly and all of that stuff, and you sort of kind of feel all rushy. That is a quick fight or flight response, okay? And that's the feelings afterwards. When your system is wore down, you don't have all of that stuff and you didn't react. Derek and I were talking about a situation with our dogs this weekend in the video 1 where we talked about he didn't respond as fast as what he wanted to. So it kind of gives a hint on hormonally, and this whole system is off. And that brings up a whole different topic that we talked about as far as, you know, amount of stress, long-term stress, but then certain, you know, like firefighters and all of these different people that have gone through things, and what impact that has long-term. We all know that it's there. We just need to be starting to talk about it a little bit better. Anyway, work stress, meetings, unhappiness in the job. Stress can get at us in a lot of different ways. Lifestyle. Through the nutrition school that I went through, they had this circle of life, and it had like all these different aspects of health. And like one thing for me, it stresses me out when my kitchen's not clean because I really like cooking. It's part of my who I am as far as providing for my people, and I can't do it when my kitchen is dirty. And then when the teenager's dirty the kitchen, it stresses me out because it feels disrespectful. But anyway, so, you know, your home environment can provide a little bit of low-level stress. A job that's unhappy, a job that you go to where your boss is constantly ragging on you or dumping stuff on you or not listening to you. Exercise is stress. So a new marker that we touched on, the C-reactive protein, is a better marker for inflammation and well-being instead of cortisol. The Smarties are now saying this, and we are needing to try to figure out how to combat exercise-related stress, because that is the one drawback of endurance training and racing that you cannot get around. This wear and tear stress, because everybody will say that running and marathoning and this long-distance triathloning, the more healthier version is doing high intensity workouts, stuff like that. Okay, so exercise is stress. Endurance training is a lot of stress. Training in the heat is epic amounts of stress, and then it snowballs into a lot more stress if you're not eating right. That's why I've been kind of really pretty diligent about trying to provide clues and tools and stuff like that to help you guys kind of mitigate and manage some of this stress. Mental stress, emotional, relationships, trauma, past stuff, responsibilities, conflict. If you aren't very good at conflict resolution, that can be very stressful. Physical stress, intense workouts, childbirth, raising babies, making babies, that's a lot of stress. Raising them, that's a lot of stress. They never said that in the book. Illness, injury, being injured or being sick in itself is stressful. Actually inflammatory and whatnot. Lack of sleep is super stressful. Food intolerances, toxins, pollutants, stuff like that provide stress to the body. It has to deal with the trash. It doesn't matter if it's real or perceived. If you feel like it's stress to you. The stress response is meant to be short-term, not long-term. It's supposed to take immediate care. You have 2 levels of a stress system, a super immediate one, and then one that will take over, and then it starts working on your HPA axis. This is your hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis. So you have this innate one, and then the hormonal one kind of takes over, and boom, chakalaka, then you get into trouble. So acute stress kind of is meant to get you ready, get your eye on the prize. Your eyes actually dilate, your heart rate goes up. I'm going to talk about that more here in a second. Long-term stress, you know, a stressful job, raising, you know, helping someone that's debilitated or, you know, sick for a long time. That's super duper stressful. Caring for a dying parent, etc., etc. All of this stuff is just a lot of stress. Buying a house, just all sorts of stress. Okay, so your nervous system is broken up into 2 parts, generally. Okay, on or off, gas pedal or brakes. Okay, so your sympathetic nervous system is the gas of the car. It's fight or flight. It slows the movement of food. We already talked about that it changes the digestive enzymes, okay, but the motility in your intestines also slows down. So I'm going to make a video on kind of the nuts and bolts of what digestion means, but it starts in your mouth and you chew, and then your body manipulates it and it breaks it down, and it continues to breaks it down, and it has a physical process and then a chemical process, and then when it gets into the intestines, then it has a movement process, and yada yada yada. Okay, so it slows your digestion down on movement, slows your digestion down on enzymes, and the sympathetic nervous system will kick everything into gear. Okay, we're going to go a little bit more into that here in a second, but eyes are dilated, heart rate is up, you're ready to go. Okay, it does a number of other things too. The second part of your nervous system, just in general, is your parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, and this also goes with this vagal nerve. These things are a nice nerve that runs through. So in the yoga world, when you learn how to vagal yourself or engage the vagal nerve that calms things down, that's part of the parasympathetic nervous system. That's why yoga is awesome. Even if you do the I hate yoga, you can still learn how to do that. The parasympathetic nervous system, the brakes of the car, it's the rest and digest, recover, heal, controls digestion, sexual arousal, salivation, urination, defecation. Yes, and sometimes when people get nervous and, you know, their bowels actually do the opposite, but that's kind of a special thing. This isn't just in general. The parasympathetic nervous system conserves energy for the next time the sympathetic nervous system needs to work, or for survival activities. Anyway, okay, so here's the nitty-gritty about hormones and how the hormones interact with this whole system. It's a really big system, and I think that I'm just sort of going to read off this part. We're going to go into it more in depth later on. I'm just going to kind of break it up a little bit for you, but just to give an idea of how crazy complex this thing is, okay? So the hypothalamus up there, he does a lot of cool stuff. He's like the train regulator. He's just super smart. He tells people what to do. And then there's the pituitary and all that stuff, who does other things too, makes hormones and tells other glands to do stuff too. So the hypothalamus gland in the brain tells the pituitary to turn on certain hormones in the adrenal glands, such as cortisol, the fight or flight. This activates the sympathetic nervous system. I'm going, it's the gas in the car. This increases heart rate, increases the flow of blood to muscles and the brain, and it affects your blood sugar. So it puts more blood sugar into your bloodstream. The blood is going more to the brains and muscles because you need to do something, okay? Blood sugar rises to provide fuel, providing glucose to be super available in the bloodstream via the liver breaking down sugar instead of sending bile to the gallbladder. Bile to the gallbladder meaning digestion. Okay. Norepinephrine is released. This hormone works to increase blood pressure along with epinephrine. The adrenal glands make adrenaline. The body then prioritizes what it's doing in the body. The body prioritizes what it's doing. Smooth muscles contract, including the intestines. Okay? Blood is diverted from the vessels, blood vessels in the intestines. Everything goes to muscles in the brain. Because it really doesn't matter if you're dead. So if you're able to, you're able to be mentally sharp and do a quick escape, not get blah blah blah, eaten by a tiger. We already talked about digestive enzymes going down. After the initial surge from stress, if the stressor is still present, the body then activates the HPA axis, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis. Okay? Your adrenals are on your kidneys. They're part of the fight or flight, sex, sleep, yada, yada, yada. Oh, sodium management, water management, namaste. Anyway, that's why when the system gets so off, things get so weird. Okay, the hormonal system works to keep the body in a state to be able to continue to deal with the stressor by releasing other hormones, CRH, ACTH, and cortisol, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so that was a lot of stuff going on, right? And so just imagine that it isn't that the stress that you're dealing with isn't that car wreck that you avoided. It's actually 8 hours a day being unhappy in a job, or being in a relationship that is not good for you, or whatever it is, right? This real or perceived, if you've been through a situation and you never really fixed it, and then you have this kind of perceived stress about certain things that just kind of sticks with you, that is real stress for you, and that has a physiological impact on your body, and so you need to go fix it. So say like a person that, maybe a young girl that was abused, and then she never really dealt with it, it never got dealt with emotionally, physically. Nobody took care of the physiological effects that stress had on the body, aka this young lady ends up having adrenal fatigue and chronic fatigue syndrome at like 16. What the heck? You shouldn't have chronic fatigue syndrome at 16. And so this is where this, some sort of emotional stress stays with you for a long time and still continues to wreak havoc on the body. Okay, it does that. It sets itself there until you kind of unravel it and undo it, and then feed the different pieces, learn how to manage the stuff, etc., etc. Probably the reason why we have so much trouble with anxiety, depression, soldiers committing suicide, all of this stuff, because we aren't addressing those things on a multiple health basis, emotional, physiological, etc. Okay? Stress is a big darn deal. On gut health, so anybody that I've ever studied with will tell you that if you don't get your stress handled, you can eat perfect and you still won't get the health benefits that you want from eating that way, because the whole system isn't working right, and mostly because your gut health is off and you won't be absorbing the stuff that you're eating. Okay, because I'm going to read to you what stress does, and this chronic stress. So we've activated this HPA axis and it's just chronically on all the time. Heck, you end up with someone that has to live with arrhythmias for the rest of their life. Okay, here we go. So yeah, because I could put my picture on here and I think that's a lot of us though. Anyway, so over time, what happens when we have this chronic level of stress where low level, our heart rate is always increased, The blood flow is always going to muscles in the brain. Our blood sugar is constantly being shoved into the blood system. Our liver is constantly being told to break down stuff. The hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal are constantly being told to produce cortisol, which competes with, remember that word prioritizing I was saying, right? And so cortisol competing with estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. So, you know, ladies, guys will struggle with things in the bedroom because of stress, and it's because the cortisol is competing with testosterone, and the body will prioritize and do cortisol first. Namaste. Anyway, just one example. It's just cray-cray what this stuff does. So these hormones over time will increase belly fat. Cortisol will increase this visceral abdominal fat. And so ladies, that's the fat around the butt, the belly, underneath the boobs. Okay, this is this dangerous fat. This is fat that is deposited around organs. Okay, the reason why it's dangerous is because it is plumb chuck full of cytokines, and cytokines is part of the inflammatory system. The inflammatory system is stupid important. However, if left unchecked, can completely wreak havoc on the body, and all the smarties are saying that inflammation is the foundation of all disease. Straight up. So this increased belly fat from cortisol, the visceral fat, heart disease, vascular disease, depression, dementia, poor blood sugar management, diabetes, low muscle tone, increased appetite. If it's constantly pushing sugar into the blood, it's going to trigger a response in your body that says, I need more. I'm still running from the tiger. I need some more. Anyway, so food intolerances and allergies. So this whole system left unchecked creates chemicals that stress the body out, chemicals such as histamines. Histamines for the heart patient is bad. I don't know if anybody knows this, but so like there's this whole red wine is good for you. However, for a certain group of people, especially with adrenal issues, histamine, red wine is like the number one thing that triggers a histamine response, and certain dark beers do it too. So this histamine response triggers this cortisol stuff, and then like for me, it makes my heart go tacky, like that. One glass of red wine. So red wine is like for people with arrhythmias is a no-no, and so it's super duper interesting how a lot of people are saying that red wine is really good for us. But it's this hormonal imbalance, this chronic stress has caused food imbalances and food allergies, and this system, this histamine response to be off as well. Leaky gut. So from here to the anus, you have a mucosal lining in your nose. That swimmer nose that you get, that's because the chlorine just completely jacks with that mucosal lining, and then you sneeze because that's part of the body is like, oh, that's Anyway, mucosal lining is everywhere. For this particular leaky gut statement, we're talking about the intestines. The mucosal lining is a protectant of it. It's kind of a living organism in and of itself. It has bacteria in it, and it's your first line of defenses for all the crappy stuff that you're eating. Because rest assured, this whole system needs to be needs to be a bacteria fighting machine, because the world is dirty, and that's okay. There's just tons of stuff out there, right? If all of this stuff works great, you have it on your skin too. You have this kind of like this acid mantle on your skin that helps keep things out. It's kind of an acidic layer. And so this using a lot of soap and hot water and all that stuff stresses your skin out, and it's not healthy for you because you break down your body's natural barrier to the outside world. So this mucosal lining takes a hit during stress. Inflammation breaks down the mucosal lining, and so then things get through to the actual endothelial, into the lining of the gut. And so the gut needs pretty tight junctions. It's a permeable, it's like a soaker hose, but smart. And that mucosal lining is a fail-safe. It's your first defense. So when stress and all this inflammation is breaking down that barrier, and then it allows things to get to the lining of the gut, which further breaks down some of the connection points, the junction points, I can't remember what they're called right this second, and makes those bigger. So then you get things that aren't meant to be in the body at that point, and that's where leaky gut leads to a whole host of huge problems. Hormonal imbalances because you're not dealing with things correctly. All kinds of stuff. So absorption issues, and this is where we get into, okay, yeah, I'm taking this magnesium, and I'm doing this, and I'm eating my Juice Plus, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing that. If you have leaky gut, you're not getting 100% of everything that you're putting in your mouth, everything that's on that bottle. You're not absorbing everything. Okay, and then if you have leaky gut and all of this stuff is going on, your motility is going to be off, the timing of it is going to be off, the pH of it is going to be off. So if you're trying to heal your thyroid issues by taking iodine, but your gut isn't right and the pH isn't right, you're not going to get to the iodine because the iodine pH window absorption is so small. It's like a 0.5%. So it's just kind of completely fascinating how this particular topic is critical for health. And so someone like Susan, she's off doing this elimination, yada, yada, yada diet, and I'm not trying to diminish it at all. It's awesome what she's doing. She's working with a functional doctor who said, we are doing this, this, and this is what you're doing, and this is what you're doing, and they have this all handled. We all need someone like that to be like, okay, cut the crap. This is what we're doing because it's so crazy important. Elevated blood sugar. So cortisol prevents insulin, or prohibits or dampens down. Insulin puts glucose into cells. So there is too much sugar in the blood. So then you become a little bit insulin resistant, which is a precursor to being diabetic. What this article didn't say, and I added, is that the sugar molecule is big. It's a big molecule, and so it causes inflammation in the endothelial lining because just think about it like a bowling ball going through there, bonk, 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 bonk. And then if you have inflammation going on, that bowling ball becomes kind of like this rusty grenadish type of thing because now it's rough, and it just creates havoc everywhere. That was a super awesome analogy, but that's exactly what it does. Creates inflammation and damages the endothelial lining. Increased inflammation, the stress, so the inflammation response. I'm going to do a specific talk about the inflammation response because it's super stinking cool, but a little scary too. And they put in here that this hormonal thing and this increased inflammation leading to anxiety and depression. Thank you, Susan. Yes, the functional doctor thing. I wish I had that. I don't have that. I haven't found it yet. But you're super lucky. Bless your heart for letting me help you with that and learning too along the process. I love it. Increased inflammation, they say anxiety and depression. And that's just because this whole HPA axis and all of this stuff is starting to be a perfect storm because your gut's not absorbing stuff. You're not getting rid of your poop right. This is why I had this meltdown the other day about pooping. I am trying to do what Susan's trying to do, and I'm a little stuck. So I'm working on the pooping thing, and my bowels are just like, la la la, I'm not listening. Okay. An altered microbiome. A microbiome is in your intestines, your good bacteria. It's an environment. An example is you have one version of bacteria that actually works with estrogen all by itself. It has its own little job. And so when they talk about an altered biome, they're talking about the diversity of the bacteria in your gut. And so this doesn't mean that you go out and get a probiotic that has 1,000,000,001 things in it. Don't go do that. Just pause on that conversation, because not everybody should be taking a probiotic, because if your gut is off and you add more stuff to it, it doesn't help it get better. It makes it worse. You've got to, and this is where working with a functional doctor or stuff like that, things that Kim and I are going to provide on down the road, will help. So your microbiome, a healthy microbiome is diverse, and it will work itself out. So one of the things people say is stop using so much antibacterial this and that. It's destroying your health. Natural stuff, okay? Use natural cleaners, all of this stuff. Let your kids play in the dirt, because they need some of this bacteria and exposure to these bacteria in order to have a healthy gut bacteria. And you guys, did you guys know that vitamin B12, this is awesome. Vitamin B12 is made from a bacteria on animal feces. Dun, 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 dun. For reals. Anyway, I'll leave that there. Increased risk for GERD, acid reflux, indigestion, and ulcers. The protective lipids are affected, so you have protective lipids everywhere. We already talked about the ones on your skin, lipids, acid mantle, that same thing. And this kind of goes along with the stress response when we said lowers the digestive enzymes, which raises the pH. This is where the old wise woman thing of taking apple cider vinegar helps with GERD, because in the case of GERD and whatnot, taking apple cider vinegar lowers the belly pH, so then everything starts working right. People tell you to take Tums, why babies like drinking milk, because the acid hurts this, but this isn't digesting your food. So when you drink Tums, it actually messes with your gut pH more. So you need to learn how to address it here and then fix your gut. So does that make sense? And that's all about this low-level stress that affects the digestive enzymes. And then eating a ton of processed foods and whatnot really wreaks havoc on the digestive enzymes as well, because your food, fruits and vegetables, have their own enzymes already with them. You don't have to use your own. Boom, boom, boom. So if you're doing a low-carb diet, say a 30%, kind of what we recommend, when you put those 30% of fruits and vegetables in your mouth, they need to count. It needs to not be green beans. It needs to be sweet potatoes. Nutrient rich on your carbs when you're doing that 30% stuff. Aggravated IBS symptoms, yeah, that's, all of this stuff we're talking about. Increased risk for SIBO, interestingly enough, and it's about the movement, it's about the motility of the intestines, so the ability to get out bacteria is greatly diminished. And lowered immunity. Cortisol suppresses the immune system. Like they say a candy bar or a soda pop suppresses the immune system for like 6 hours. And it's part of this prioritizing and this competition of things. Your body can't do everything all at the same time. It alternates between making progesterone and estrogen. It's not meant to make both at the same time. And it can't do all these different things. So like we already talked about, cortisol will compete with testosterone. So if a guy is constantly under stress, he's going to have less testosterone. So he's going to have less risk-taking components. He's going to feel less confident. And then obviously that affects other things as well. Ladies, the same thing, because ladies need testosterone as well. So anyway, there we go. Stress. This is so kind of rah. Gina and I were talking about it. So if your body gets used to, always has this homeostasis. So if you're used to eating an epic amount of sugar, it creates that as a new level of homeostasis. And then so that's what it needs. Is partly entwined with addiction. And I'm taking a class on eating things and how we get into addictive type of behavior and what's the actual physiological stuff that goes on closely tied to this stuff. But the idea is that the body is constantly getting this kind of set point. And this is what happens with stress. Okay. We get used to being chronically under stress. Okay. And then sometimes we create these mental kind of feedback loops of things like we need some stress in order to do this, to do that, to do that. But these new set points get set. And then you have to go way above that to get a response. And then if you have done all of this devastating, all of this stuff that has just long-term devastated your hormonal imbalance, you can't really ever get to that next, I need a little bit more. So then AKA we have caffeine, we have this, we have that, or we go to the doctor and we get things to sort of help that kind of don't help, or we do, addictive type of painkiller thing or whatever it is, okay? So this set point, we need to kind of recognize that when we're trying to make changes, it's going to feel weird and crazy, and because our set points they're just kind of all over the place. Like Gina was saying, the car's meant to go 35 all the time and you're used to 70 all the time. Well, that's your set point. And then your risk stuff is like clear up in 75, 80, 90, where, most normal folks or whatever. And that's sort of in personalities too. So that's a little, anyway, that is kind of a nutshell of what stress does in the body. Okay. It just does this huge cascade effect, this stress response. The sympathetic nervous system engages all of these things that go on, and it's just off the chain, completely unhealthy to deal with chronic stress, okay? Like job related, and then you need to go work out to relieve stress, to get rid of that energy, to have more control of your life, or whatever. People do a lot of different things to deal with stress. A lot of different things to deal with stress. It's just all over the place what we do to deal with stress. Sugar, we eat a lot of sugar to deal with stress. Become addicted to Facebook to find, relief in a different world, watch too much TV, maybe become like, do a lot of gaming and stuff like that. So the next thing we're going to talk about is how to feed and engage and use the parasympathetic nervous system, the brakes of the car more, the rest and digest. We're going to talk about that next time. And that's going to be a part 3, and I'm going to go through what the school is saying, but I'm going to add in a little bit more of my own from kind of an Ayurveda and a yoga perspective, because I think that sometimes we need a little bit more than what they're saying. Like, you can journal all day long, or you can meditate all day long, but sometimes it's just not enough. There's a couple of us that we just need something a little bit more powerful. So I'm going to add that, and I'm going to try to get that done tomorrow. So we have this whole tomorrow or Friday, and we have this kind of 3-part series on this stress thing, so we can kind of start writing down for ourselves, kind of evaluate, have an honest conversation with ourselves, and then I'm going to provide some tools, and if you guys have other tools as well, we totally appreciate it, on what we can do to start dealing with stress more appropriately. Because it's not about getting rid of the stressful things. Life is always stressful. It's just life. It's just stimulus. And, I don't want to go live in a cave. I want to learn how to be more copacetic my environment. Okay, yeah, I learned that. Yeah, I just found out my dad has cancer. Yeah, this, yeah, that. Okay. But we can still be sort of kind of like, okay, this is the thing. This is what Gina said. This is the things that I have control over. These are the things that I'm going to work on. These are the things that I'm going to pray about, and I don't have control over these, and I'm going to have faith on these. And just having a more, you know, if you have a boss that's a jerk face, there are ways. I stayed in aviation longer than what I needed to, because I was practicing skills on how to keep my shit together when it hit the fan. And so that's some of the things that we need to do. It's not about getting rid of the stress. It's learning how to manage your energy better, learning how to release certain things, learning how to identify, okay, this thing is causing some chronic stress. Here's where it came from. Here's what I'm going to do about it so that it doesn't filter through and affect all the rest of the things that I'm doing. So like a situation, you know, you have a relationship issue and you've had childhood trauma. So how do you deal with the childhood trauma so the relationship issue isn't as stressful? That's what we're sort of talking about as far as this chronic thing. And what I want to provide some things for a little bit more nitty gritty to really get at what the problem is, because the breathing exercises are super freaking cool, whatever, fine. But let's not have to do the breathing exercises. So anyway, that's what I have to say about stress. Hope you found it helpful, inspiring. Always feel free if you want to listen to this and have some thoughts. Maybe everybody that's listened to this, if you feel inspired to write something down, share it with the group or share it with me or write it down in your journal or do something. But if you have the thoughts and something stuck with you today, do something with it. Hope you're having a good day. Namaste.